Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Introduction to Web Development. Now in this video we're going to be going over inputs. Now if you did watch my previous series, JavaScript for Beginners, we kind of went a little bit into inputs in the sense that back in that series we actually had our website give us a pop-up. Like it would say, hey, do this or whatever, and then you as the user would type something in and then hit submit. But in this video, we're going to kind of be going over the HTML side and the JavaScript, where we actually create like some sort of text box inside our website so that a user can actually like type in it, like most websites do for input. So we're going to be learning about the input element and its various different types. There are many more than these three, but these are the main three I'm going to focus on today, where you can input text or click on a button or input a date or something. And then we're going to do some styling. I might just pretty much gloss over this because the majority will be in JavaScript, where we kind of interface like with the inputs and do something when you click or when you change the text, or and then actually how to access our HTML inside of JavaScript, which remember is that programming language that allows our websites to become interactive. So we're going to go ahead and get started by opening up the index.html and clicking the Go Live button. At this point, we should see our website from the previous video. Remember, we added some responsive styling, so it pretty much grows and shrinks with the size of the window. Now, we are going to keep all of this for now, just because it's not going to be too in the way. And I'm going to go ahead and come under this main where we're going to create our inputs. So in order to create an input in HTML, we literally call the tag is called input, and it is I believe a singular tag. So it's another one of those that you do not put something inside. But input does have an attribute because as you can see, it's just like this text box, and I think it is text by default, but still, we always want to specify a type attribute. So you give type equals, and then here are a couple that show up here, except there's a ton. So we're going to go ahead and search for text, which is this one right here. So type equals text, and then we're going to save this. And notice it doesn't change because I believe it is a text input by default, but it's always, like I said, good to specify it out. So we can come into this input here and then just type whatever. See, this is like essentially what we're going to be working with. And actually, I changed my mind. We're going to delete this just so it doesn't get in the way. And then let's create like some sort of, maybe let's create a header. If you remember, an H1 kind of denotes some sort of text, and then put input and then a colon, just so we can see our input, and then this. And we might want to change this to like an H4 or an H3. Okay. So yeah, now we have our input, and then we have the actual input. So what we're going to be doing at first is interfacing with the console so that we can see what we're typing. But so we're going to go ahead and just right-click, inspect, and then click on the console right here. So that is the basic input element. That's the text. Now, there are other kinds of inputs, so let's go ahead and change this text. Or actually, in fact, let's just add another input. So go ahead and copy this and paste it onto this line and change the type to button, for example. And you notice it gets its little, this is like a blank button. And then we can literally come here and say text or, yeah, there we go. So when you created a button input, you actually can specify a value, and a value is basically different based on what kind of input it is. Like if I'm not mistaken, if it's a text input, the value is actually what I type inside it. So this is the value. But if it's a button input, the value is actually what shows on the button itself. So just keep that in mind. Based on the type attribute, will change what this value necessarily means. So let's go ahead and create another input. So remember, if you're on VS Code like I am, you can go ahead and just type out input, and then it'll automatically specify the type. And then let's change this to date. So notice we get a little date input here. So that's cool. And then we can just say, we can actually change this. So input, and then let's just quickly add some paragraphs, some quick p tags to say text. And then let's add one here, and then just say date, and then add one right here, and just say maybe submit or something there. So now we've got a little form going. We've got like a text and then a text input, a date and a date input, and then a submit button, which we can change its value to submit with a capital S, and then boom, we can click this to submit later. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually have it, when we click submit, it'll like print something here in the console. So that is the fundamentals of setting up our HTML, and that basically was covering the button and the date type as well. And those are all the elements we're going to be learning. Quick styling, let's go ahead and give these inputs some IDs, because remember, if we want to style something, we should give it an ID or like a class. In this case, I'm going to give it an ID, and the reason for that is because we will actually be accessing the ID in JavaScript as well. Because if you remember back in the video where I explained selectors or IDs in classes, I also said that in addition to CSS, JavaScript actually makes use of these so that we can tell our JavaScript, hey, I want to select this ID and then I want to get its text, or I want to set what's inside it, or if someone types something in it, I want to do something. And the JavaScript needs to know either the ID or the class, and generally the ID if you're looking at a specific input. So we can just say this is our text-input, and then this one can have an ID of our date-input, and then this one over here can have an ID of our submit-button, for example. So yep, those are our IDs for the input. And then we're going to go ahead and open up our style.css and just delete like all of this. Now remember, these are media queries from the previous video. If you happen to miss that, go ahead and check it out. Playlist linked in the description. And then let's just select our three. So we have our text-input right here. Remember, hashes for IDs, and then dots for classes. I don't use classes that much in this tutorial, but it's very commonly used. So are IDs. So just keep both in mind. And then we have our date-input. And then we have finally our submit-button. And then we can kind of play around with the styles here. Like we can give our, in fact, notice how all of these have a little black outline. We can actually also give it a class so that we can maybe have some common styles. So we can just say this is our inputs. We can say class inputs, class is inputs, and then we can give this one also a class is inputs. And this is basically a common selector. So if we want to style or do something to all inputs, then we can do a dot inputs, and then all the styles will be applied to all three of these. So let's say we want to give it a border radius, and if you remember, border radius actually curves things. We used it for images in the past, but guess what? We can also use it, for example, with our inputs. And now notice that our inputs are rounded, which is pretty cool. And I actually let's just use 1px, which stands for 1 pixel. And this isn't really much, so let's change this to like 5 pixels. There we go. So notice we have like nice little rounded rectangles. And then let's say we want to change the border color. So we can say border color, and let's make that, let's make it like a nice, so if we do an RGB here, and if you don't know what RGB is, it's like red, green, blue. You mix red, green, and blue to kind of create colors, but I'm actually just, let's select blue here and then click on this. In VS Code, we can actually edit with the color wheel. So let's just give it like a nice light color, like this, for example. And if I save this, notice the, if I zoom in here, the kind of background color is this. And it actually has a gradient, which I'm not sure why. Huh, that looks pretty cool though. So I'm gonna keep it. So yeah, that is what we have so far, and I'm gonna go ahead and actually zoom into 150 so you can see that better. So these are our inputs, and then they have a nice color and a kind of a curved corners. So that style has been applied to all three. And for example, if we wanted to set our width, and we're going to use a little bit of our responsive styling from the previous video, and set it equal to 100%, then notice that the width of this text input is now 100%. So it's 100% of the window's size. So if we zoom out, it keeps growing, basically. And then our date input, let's give it a background color maybe of Azure. Boom. And notice now it has this little light blue Azure background color. And then let's give this one our submit button. Let's make the value text bold. So we can say text or font weight. and then we can say bold. And so font weight, if you see right here, has a bunch of different values, 100, 200. There's bold, bolder, and lighter, normal, inherit. Like there's these like bold, bolder, lighter, and normal are kind of like English. You know, we know what these mean. And then these hundreds also denote like 100 denotes like really thin, and then like 200 is, you know, slightly less thin, stuff like that. So let's give it a 400, and then notice it's really thin. If we give it 100, it's as thin as it gets. But if we give it like a 600, it gets thicker. So this is like semi-bold, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll just give it a font weight of bold for now. And notice it is bold here. So that has been like some styling. This is kind of like been a general practice for styling of various topics that we've been learning over the last few videos, which is pretty cool. And then last but not least, we are going to add our JavaScript. So if you remember back from the first episode, which I have the file here, the way we added JavaScript is we created this script tag here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and basically we create a script tag, except I'm going to delete, whoops, I'm going to delete, the contents inside of the script, and then we're going to give it a source equals dot slash, we're going to call this script.js. And then since I've created this link to script.js like I have up here, href equals style.css, I am going to have to create a script.js. And now we have our JavaScript. So I'm going to basically be going through this as if you already know the JavaScript, because I created a JavaScript for Beginners tutorial series, which if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check out the videos that may be applicable to the code I'm writing here. So we're going to go ahead and start off by learning how to access the inputs. So to actually access stuff in JavaScript, we need to do a document dot and then get elements by ID. And what this function does, so remember document and then there's a dot here. So the document stands for the actual web page itself. And then remember a dot stands for possession. And then get element by ID, if you notice here by these parentheses, is a function, which remember a function is something that takes in stuff and possibly gives back stuff. And in this case, we are getting something. So it takes in an ID and then it gives you back the actual element. So watch this. So in here we have our text element, which has a text input ID. So we're going to give it text-input, and then we have this now. So let's go ahead and do something with it. So let's say inner text is equal to test. Although this isn't going to work. Never mind. We want to set the value, node value equal to test. Nope. Wait. 1 second. Set dot value dot. Okay. Actually, let's go ahead and work with the on change. So go ahead and keep this document.get element by ID text-input and then change it to on change equals, and then so we're actually updating a member of the element. So right here, all of this code right here gets us the input element, and then again we're doing a dot for possession, and then on change is a function. So we create a function, and this function gets called with the like every time the text gets changed. So if we just console.log change with an exclamation, if I open this text and every time there we go. Every time I write something in the text and then I unfocus, it's considered as a change. So watch, I'm going to type a bunch of stuff and then I'm going to go ahead and click off, and then it says change. And basically this is our gateway into kind of controlling behavior with inputs. And I'm actually, I've noticed this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and split this into 2 videos. In the next video, we're going to be going over kind of the more specifics with regards to JavaScript and how to make it interact with our HTML. Because there are many things we can do. Like there's not just document.get element by ID. There is also document.get elements by class name, and then there are other functions, like we can have it instead of on change, we can say on submit, and then we can like say on click for a button or something like that. So that would definitely be a subject for a longer video. So I'm going to go ahead and defer that to the next one. So if you want to see more videos in this playlist, or if you happen to miss any previous videos in this series, go ahead and check out the playlist linked in the description where I'll be uploading daily. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.